Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 17th and tonight's movie is The Taking of Deborah Logan, which is kind of a weird title. It makes it sound more like a kidnapping movie than what it actually is, which is a possession movie. The Taking of Deborah Logan is a found footage movie that involves a possession, so naturally it is going to be compared to The Last Exorcism, one of the most notorious movies in the found footage subgenre. While this movie isn't quite as good as The Last Exorcism, I still think it was pretty good. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. It had a couple of issues, but for the most part it was a very effective horror movie. The plot is that there's this group of documentarians who want to make a movie about Alzheimer's and its effect on people and their families. The main focus of their movie is Deborah Logan, a very old woman who has a daughter named Sarah Logan, who's about middle-aged and is also one of the main characters of this movie. It starts out as just Alzheimer's, but weird stuff starts happening, and eventually it becomes clear that something a lot more sinister is happening to her. But before we even get to the possession part, I would like to say that the Alzheimer's documentary part of the movie is pretty effective. Alzheimer's is just a really, really sad, depressing disease, and they capture that very well in this movie. You can definitely see the pain that it puts Deborah Logan and her family through. But she starts doing stuff that isn't really indicative of an Alzheimer's patient. A lot of it includes various forms of self-harm, and there are some pretty disgusting moments of gore in this movie. It would be bad enough seeing this happening to a normal person, like what she's doing to herself, but also considering the fact that she's an old woman makes it worse. Old people look really fragile anyway, so to see one tearing themselves apart, both figuratively and literally, is just absolutely horrifying to watch. This is a good example of gore that actually sticks with you instead of just being a cheap gross out. They definitely try to be very creative with some of the scares. Like, for example, she nails the window shut because she thinks that there's an intruder trying to get in. And at one point, you see it fly open, even though we knew it was nailed shut a few seconds ago. That was really good. And another thing they did, which I'm going to say is an homage to The Exorcist, is that there's a scene where for a few seconds you see a horrifying face. One that just fills up the entire frame, but it's there and gone. There's a chance you might even not notice it. I remember when I saw that scene in The Exorcist, I stopped and I paused, and when I actually got a good look at the face, that face was really scary. And this one is not quite as bad, but it is pretty grotesque. However, considering that this is found footage, I find it a little bit weird that whoever was making this movie didn't notice that when they were editing the footage together. But besides horror, there is some nice character development in this movie. At the beginning, you kind of see the relationship between Deborah Logan and her middle-aged daughter Sarah, and it's not that close. It's not that comfortable. It's not tense. It's not like they hate each other, but there's just a very clear separation between the two. But throughout the movie, it becomes very clear how much that these two care about each other. And by the end, Sarah is willing to do whatever it takes to save her mother. There are a lot of good things in The Taking of Deborah Logan, but I think that the main problem with it is that it kind of had two ideas for what to do with the movie. There was the first one, which was the thing where these people are making a documentary about Alzheimer's, and the patient who they think has Alzheimer's is actually getting possessed, and they could have played out with that. But around halfway through the movie, it's it kind of turns into a bit of a supernatural mystery where there's this one specific guy who committed murders in the past, and they're trying to see if maybe his spirit is the one possessing her and what he's up to and what he wants and stuff like that. I feel like both of these would have been better as their own movies, something that they could have explored a little bit more. It's not distracting or really even that bad, but there is a lot going on. Enough for I think that the things that needed to be focused on didn't get all the attention that they deserved. The Taking of Deborah Logan is an interesting watch, and it does manage to be very scary. While there are better examples out there in this subgenre of a movie about possession, this one I still think is worth a watch. Alright, now let's talk about some spoilers. As it turns out, the spirit that is possessing Deborah Logan is a guy who used to be a physician or something, and he was trying to do a witchcraft ritual in order to become immortal. It involves sacrificing 5 little girls who just had their first menstrual cycle. There was a lot of snake symbolism, snake imagery, but he died before he was able to actually finish the ritual. Deborah actually killed him to protect her daughter, Sarah, who was right around the point in her life where she would have been a victim. She killed him, buried him in the yard, and the only person she ever told about it was her neighbor, Harris, who is still their neighbor by the time the actual movie starts. It's revealed that that man's spirit is the one that's possessing Deborah Logan in order to finish the ritual. so that he will have eternal life or a new body or whatever. While at the hospital, Deborah kidnaps a little cancer patient girl, and she takes them to like a little cave system where the guy did his sacrifices way back in the day. The documentarians, the daughter, and the police all follow her to that spot, and it's 3 people that go in: a cop, the lead documentarian, and the daughter Sarah. They find a like shack or something in the middle of the woods, and the cop goes in, but she gets shot. So the other 2 go in, and they track Deborah down using the light of the camera to see their way around. I remember in the movie, I think it was like called Hollow. It was a found footage movie. It wasn't very good, but one thing that they did that I thought was clever was that they used the camera light to see. And in that movie, the camera light would only turn on if the camera was recording, which I think is sort of what they're doing now. They had night vision on it, but they only used it once. And I guess that makes sense considering the fact that night vision only allows the person with the camera to see. Eventually, they do find Deborah and the little girl in the cave system, and there's a lot of scary imagery. At one point, her mouth unhinges like a snake, and she's like swallowing the girl whole. It was a pretty good effect and was pretty scary. Sarah, Logan, and the documentarians were researching cases like this earlier in the movie, and they came across one where it was fixed by burning the dead body of whose spirit is doing the possessing. They do that, there's some earthquakes, there's some rumblings, a lot of scary stuff happens. But by the end, it seems that the spirit is gone. They later say in like a clip of a newscast that Deborah Logan is put on trial for the crimes that she committed, which was like a lot of assault, kidnapping, attempted murder, and it said that she was unfit to defend herself. And I don't know if that means like she was just completely senile or she just like turned into a vegetable or something. I don't know. But the twist at the end is that they show that little cancer patient girl, and she beat the cancer, and she's like having a happy birthday, and she's getting interviewed, and they ask her, "What are your plans for the future?" And then she says, "It's a secret," and then she turns to the camera and gives this really creepy smile. The implication of this is that the ritual was actually a success, and the spirit of the dead man possessed her. That I liked. That was a pretty good twist at the end of the movie. While certainly not perfect, The Taking of Deborah Logan is a pretty clever and scary horror movie. I would recommend it. I'll see you tomorrow.